Hi. So looks like Michael is, or his mom, or someone is trying to call me, which is exciting. I'll call them back as soon as our video is over. But it did cut that video in, just stopped our video for a moment. So you may have to start a second video. So anyway, or I'll see if I can combine the two videos together. So back to number 18. Here's number 17. And you can get that on your paper. Make sure you get everything that I draw you need to have on your paper. So it will be part of your grade, guys. So make sure you get all of this. Good news for today. Since it's an investigation lesson, my goal is to go through all of the lesson with you, which means you will have no additional homework for today, for Thursday, okay? All right, so let's go on to number 18, which wants us to add fractions that are cut into 8 pieces each. So it is 2/8 plus 3/5 fifths. Did I do that right? No, I didn't. 3/8, excuse me. 2/8 plus 3/8 is how many eighths? That's the question. Now I'll tell you a little trick again, remind you what I said a moment ago, which is if the denominators are the same, that means that you have two circles that are cut into the same number of pieces. So it's easy to just add the top number, the numerator, but we need to prove that. So let's go ahead and draw two congruent circles again. Try to make them the exact same size and shape. Okay. Are these eighths? No, we're not done yet. We need to cut these in half again. Cut that in half. Cut this in half carefully so they are about the same size. Okay. And so now that I have 8 equal parts, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4 on the right, I'm going to go ahead and start right in my favorite spot here, that top left corner, and I'm going to shade 2 of the 8. And here, I'm going to shade 1, 2, 3 of this 8th, and just find out how many eighths did I draw. I mean, how many did I shade? I had 1, 2 of this 8th, and I had 3 of this one, so all together I shaded 5. This is the number that means shaded, out of how many equal parts? All right. And our answer is 5/8. You can draw yourself a happy face if you got that. All right. Let's move on to number 19. Okay, number 19, the only difference is now we will have 2 fractions on number 19 where we are going to cut them into fourths this time, and we're going to subtract instead of add. So it's the same process, except instead of adding, we're going to have a bigger fraction on the left, smaller on the right, same number of equal parts, there'll be 4. And instead we're going to subtract this next time. So you can see that you can add or subtract fractions once they have the same number of equal parts, or once your circle is drawn with the same number of equal parts. So you all know that we are prepping you for 5th grade and upper grades. So this is all part of preparing you for your future learning, right? So please pay close attention and learn. All right, so number 19, the first time we need to subtract these 2 fractions. So number 19, we have, it says, if you're using your manipulatives, that's what the direction is for. It says put 3/4 on your desk. and take 2 of the fourths away. You know what I forgot to do? What I forgot to do is that I forgot to look at my book, and I'm going straight off of the papers, exactly what I asked us not to do. So let's see. I think I'm going to go back, and we're doing just fine at this point with this, but let's just take a quick look. Number 19. Yeah, basically the same. So yeah, we're doing just fine right now by looking at our paper. So what we need to do is subtract 3/4. Remember, we just switched to subtraction. That's how we subtract 2 fractions. And number 19, we have 3/4 minus 2/4. Okay, now little trick for you again, because the denominators are the same, we can just go ahead and say 3 minus 2 is 1/4. But we need to prove that with using our fraction manipulatives, if I had some, or very simply drawing some congruent circles to show this. All right, so let's see. 3/4. Let's cut both of these into fourths. And we have 1, 2, 3 going counterclockwise. Okay, now this one's a little bit different because what we're doing is we're taking away a fourth. Okay, we're going to, what we're doing is we're basically just removing one of these fourths, right? It's almost easier to not show this one and just take away, oh, I'm sorry, we're taking away 2 of 4. So we could basically just erase these 2, and what do you get? 3 out of 4 minus 2 out of 4 is 1 out of 4, right? But I'm going to show it the way I was going to, which is 3/4 minus 2/4 minus 2 out of 4. And just think, 3 minus 2 is going to just give you 1 left. Remember, we're subtracting here. Okay, now this is where fraction circles come in handy, because if you had just 3 out of 4 and now you took 2 of those away, you would see easily that you have 1 left. Okay, let us move on to number 20, where we are again going to subtract. Okay, so the next couple of problems are both subtracting fractions still. Okay. Now, if you need a quick break, you know you can pause it with your parents' permission and go get a drink of water or whatever you need. I'll have a drink now myself, and then we will go back to number 20. Very similar problem. Number 20, it says put 4/8 on your desk and take 1 of the 8ths away. So this is saying 4/8 minus just 1 of those 8ths is going to give you how many 8ths, right? And I can already see that the answer is going to be 3/8, right? Because denominators are the same. I can just go ahead and do the computation, go ahead and subtract it. Okay, and I think I will go ahead and write that down for you. But I want to also show you this on circles. Here is my first circle cut into 1/8. I may just do 1 circle here. Let's see. Okay, this is where the fraction manipulatives, the circles you have really come in handy. Okay, so if I have 4 out of 8, okay, and that's 4 little pieces. It's like 1/8 plus 1/8 plus 1/8 plus 1/8, 4 of those, and then you take away just one of those. So I'm going to just put an X on this, maybe in another color. This time I'm going to do it a little bit different. We had 4/8, and then I'm going to take away 1/8. How many are left? We have 3/8 left. Okay. All right. Number 21. I hope you're understanding what we're doing here. Knowing you guys as well as I do, I think that you following along with me here, that you probably are understanding very well, and that we're going at a pace that I think you can understand without really any problems. But if this is confusing for you, please stop and get some help too, and maybe have somebody go through this video with you and talk about it some more, okay? So number 21 says, put 2 halves on your desk, okay? So, and then take one of the halves away, which is the same as 2. Remember the bottom, this is a half. 2, when you split something into 2 equal parts, that is like having 2 halves of something like this. If you have your fraction manipulatives, you'd have the 2 different pieces. Okay, and so if you had 2 of your fraction manipulatives, I'm trying to draw those, see how it's separated, and then you take one of those away, take 1/2 away, well, how many do you have left? You have the other half, right? So there you go. That's number 21. Easy peasy. All right. Now, number 22 takes us to something a little bit different. So this is a whole nother part of this lesson. It's activity 2. And it says that we are to learn now how fractions and decimals are related. They are related. They're like family members. They can be, it's like you have a fraction and you can change its costume and make it into a decimal, or vice versa. So let's take a look. So number 22. Okay. Well, what this lesson really wants you to do, first of all, what we're asked to do is to label our fraction circles. So if you have your fraction circles, this would be a great time to take the ones that are split into halves. So the one that is just like that last problem where you have 2 pieces. So find your fraction circle that has 2 pieces now. I'll pause if you need to play with them a little bit to find the 2 that are that make 2 halves, that make a whole. Okay, and then on each of those, I want you to write 1/2. So you're to write 1/2. Okay, and then on the back side of it, or even on the front if you wish, equals, and I want you to write 0 and 50 hundredths. This is the same as 0.50. This is the same as 0.50. Now, what if I took out those zeros? You know what? I'm not sure that you can see that very well. So let me draw this a little bit bigger. Let me draw it really nice and big. Here we go. So you have your 2 pieces, which of course is a half of a fraction, a half of a whole. And I want you to write that these also equal 0 and 50 hundredths. So I often say to think of a fraction, and once it's in a decimal form, think of it as money, right? So 50 cents would be half of a dollar. So 50 cents plus 50 cents gives you a whole dollar, one whole thing. So I want you now to assemble your next fraction circles, which are the fourths, okay? And I want you to, well, actually first, let's finish number 22, which is 1/2 is what decimal? And we can see it's the same as 0 and 50 hundredths, or 0 and 5 tenths if you remove the 0. So you are asked to fill in these three, and next to it I just want you to write or 5 tenths. Okay, so that's number 22. Right, and I want you to draw this as well. Or if you have your fraction circles, then just go ahead, which I hope that you do and that you are doing that right now. I would like you to do that, is to go ahead and label those two fraction circles. Pause it if you need to. I'm moving on to number 23. All right. Number 23 wants to know 1/4 is the same as what decimal? 1/4. Think of quarters. Think of money for a second, and I think you will immediately figure out that 1/4 is the same as 0 and 25 hundredths, kind of like 25 cents, right? If I was to put 25 cents here, it would be really easy to tell, but it's not asking for the money version, so I will just have 0 and, remember the dot means and, 25 hundredths, okay? And then number 24 is 3/4. And if you think about money, again, we ran into this earlier with the fraction circle. If you have 4 quarters, 3 of the 4 quarters is the same as 75 cents. And the fraction 3/4 is equal to 75 hundredths, right? Number 25. Here is one that's a little bit more tricky. We have 1/3 of something. 1/3 of something. And I want to just teach you and have you try to remember that this is the same as 0 and 33 hundredths, okay? But here it's a little bit tricky in that I'm going to put this line that you may have never seen before over the 33, which means it's really that this number is going to like repeat and go on forever. Okay, so 1/3 of something is the same as 0 and 33 hundredths going on forever. So instead of writing all those 3's and many, many more, we just put a line above this that says that this is going to continue. Okay, now if you didn't know how to figure that out, which we don't off the top of our heads, to figure out 1/3 of something, and here is, let's see, cut this into basically perfectly thirds. Okay, and it's not fourths, that's easier, but exactly just 1/3 of something. How would we do that? I'm going to go ahead and erase number 23 and 24 so we have more room to focus on number 25. All right, and well, one way to figure out this number is to think that 1/3 is the same as taking 1 and dividing it into 3 equal parts. Okay, so 1 whole of something, dividing it into 3 equal parts, and 1/3. But 1/3 is the same as 1 divided by 3. So if I do the math and add some zeros, I should get 0.33 with 333 moving on. Let's do it. How many times, like what number can I put up here times 3 to give me 1? Well, guess what? There is nothing. So I'm going to maybe just put a 0. 0 times 3 is 0, right? All right, let's quickly do the math. Now here is what I do to continue something that I don't really have an answer for yet. I'm going to put a 0 and I'm going to bring it down, okay? All right, but anytime you have to add a 0 to be able to continue on, then you are going to put in a decimal right after that, after the 1. So before I can add a 0, I'm going to put a decimal and then move that same decimal to the top. It's kind of new and weird, I'm sure, for you guys. Okay, so now I have a new division problem, right? I have 10 divided by 3, or what number that I can put up here times 3 is going to give me 10, or something just under 10 that doesn't go over. And of course, hopefully you're thinking, oh, that's a 3. I know that one. 3 times 3 is 9. 10 minus 9 is 1. Okay, and here you can see a pattern that I'm ending up with a 1 again. I can bring down another 0, and this is just going to continue with 3s. So let's do it. Let's go ahead and do it. Put another 0. Okay, and that will give me 1 0 at the bottom again. Hopefully you can look at it without looking at anything else. 1 0. And then what number up here? Let's extend this division line. It's going to be another 3. 3 times 3 is going to give us 9. Let me erase some of this so we have more room. Okay. Okay. 3 times 3 is 9. 10 minus 9 is 1. And again, we have a 0. So give me another 0 if I wanted to move on. And then another 3 at the top. 3 times 3 is 9. Subtract. You get a 1 again. And you could just keep doing this for the rest of your life. And as soon as we see this happening, where it's just over and over and over again, we cut it off usually after well, we could leave it, but as the answer, we cut it off and we just leave 2 spaces usually and put the number at the top like this, which means this is going to go on forever, and we are going to stop with that there, okay? So to finish answering number 25, 1/3, let's see, 1/3 was the same as equals 0.33, or 33 hundredths. That goes on forever, okay? And let's move on to 1/5. Let's think about what would be like 1/5 of a dollar. 1/5 of a dollar. For number 26. 1/5. Well, you could do the division. You could say 1 divided by 5 to get that number. And we know that our answer has to have the whole number, the dot for and then a 2 place decimal, which is the hundredths place. So we're going to end in the hundredths place. Well, let's go ahead and figure this out then together. Okay, 1/5. 1/5 of a dollar. I think some of you are probably figuring that out with money. $1 divided by 5, in other words. But let's go ahead and do this type of math. 1 divided by 5. Again, it's just like what we did earlier with the 3. 1 divided by, what times 5 is going to give you 1? Nothing. So 0 times 5 is 0. And what it's going to do is give us this 1 again. Then we bring down, we put a 0. Don't forget your decimals. As soon as you have to add zeros here, you're going to put a decimal place here and here. So now we bring down that 0, and guess what we've got? We're repeating that, the 1 0 1 0 again, just like we did before. So we say, what times 5 is 10? Well, 2 times 5 is 10. And then we subtract that. Okay, and then, well, we may not. Well, let's see what happens. Let's add another 0. What times 5 gives you 0? It's a 0. 0 times 5, you've got your zeros. And what we have, instead of going on with 10, 10, 10, and that way, now it's just giving us 0 after 0 after 0. So since we already have our 2 places, we don't need to put that line over the third space. We don't need to keep doing this 0 thing forever. It's just 0, 0, 0, 0, 0 is the pattern that's forming. All we want is the 0 and 20. 0 and 20 hundredths. Okay, so that's as far as we really want to go with this. It's just 0 and 20 because that's what we were asked to do. And we're not going to add another place and then show that the zeros continue on. We don't care about that. We only care about it until the hundredths place in this problem. Okay. Number 27 is 1/8 equals what decimal? Let's figure that one out. 1/8 is the same as 1 divided by 8. So 1/8. Okay, what decimal part is 1/8? What decimal is this? Well, the best way to figure that out is to go ahead and either memorize the answer, which I could just give you, but I won't, or to go ahead and divide it. So let's see. And this is not 8 divided by 1, guys. This is 1 divided into 8 equal parts. Also, let's review. This number, the 1, is the dividend in a division problem. 1 divided by 8, the 8 is the divisor. I hope you're about to say at home. 1 divided by 8. And then the answer will be, of course, what is the answer? Dividend divided by divisor is the, oh, I can't think of it right now. Quotient, that's it, quotient. Dividend divided by divisor is the quotient. Okay, so 1 divided by 8. How many times, what times 8 is going to give you 1? Absolutely nothing is going to give you that fact. So 0 times 8 is 0. And we do our subtraction. 1 minus 0 is 1. I need something more to work with, so I'm going to add a 0. But before I do, I need to put a decimal, because originally this was just a whole number 1, but now I need some decimal part to work with. So I'm going to add a 0. Doesn't change what that number really is. 1 and 0 tenths is not any different than 1. So, excuse me. All right, so let's see, bring down the 0. And now I finally have something I can work with. What times 8 gives me 10, or the closest thing to it, is my question. Let me get rid of that notification. There we go. We know that 1 times 8 gets me as close as I can to the 10. Do the subtraction. Now I have a different number. Look at that. Now I have a 2. All right, so this is not going to be repeating in the same way that 1/3 did, which was 0 and 33/100. We have something different to work with. So now we have a remainder of 2. Okay, what we can do here, instead of saying 0.1 remainder 2, we don't want to do that, because remember, for number 27, we need to fill in all 3 of these lines, right? So I already know that it's 0.1, and I need my next part. So I need this next number. So then ask yourself, what can you do now? Let's put another 0 and bring it straight down up until this line. Okay, put that 0 there. We're going to have to extend this line as well here. And we think 20 divided by 8 is what? Or we think, what times 8 can we put that will get us close to 20, right? So we think, well, 2 times 8 is 16. That's pretty close. 3 times 8, that's already, 24? So we're already too high if we go 3 times. So I'm going to say 2 times 8 is 16. And we have 4 left down here. Okay, so that gets us to 0.1. We can add our next number. Okay, but in this particular case, I want to go one step further, because I want you to see that the number that belongs here to really finish this off is 0.125, okay, which is the same as 0 and 125 weird thousandths with your tongue sticking out. This is a thousandths place, so I'm going to have you actually add that. But I just gave that away, so let me prove it to you. So now down here we have a 4. Let's bring it one more place. Okay, and add one more 0 here, just to really give us the number that we really want to learn. Okay, so now we have what next number that I have to put over that 0 I just created. What times 8 is going to give me 40? And I'm going to say it's 5 times 8 will give me 40. I'm going to subtract 40 minus 40 and get a 0, and it is perfectly finished. There is no need to go on. I have a remainder of 0. I've completed the whole thing. So 1/8 of something is equal to 0 and 125 out of 1,000. Okay, 125 thousandths. Okay, and so go ahead and write that in. And these are things that I would just like you to memorize. Okay, 1/8 of something is 0.125. 125 out of 1,000 of something. It's equivalent to that. Okay, some big numbers there. Let's go on to number 28. And we're getting close to the finish line now. Okay, number 28. Again, good news is by doing this investigation with me, you will be done for today. You will not need to have any non-star problem time alone. So we have 0.125. You know where we got that? That's the same as 1/8, right? Compared now to 0.25. Okay, so now we just learned a moment ago in number 27 that 0.125 is the same as 1/8, right? and 0 and 25 hundredths, if you look back up on number 23, we found that that's like a quarter, right? Like 25 cents is 1 out of 4 of a dollar, right? So we are, again, we're really looking at, well, which one's bigger? 1 out of 8 pieces of a pie or 1 out of 4 bigger pieces of a pie, right? And if you're not sure yet that 1/4 is in fact bigger than 1/8, we could also draw ourselves the congruent circle. We can say, okay, that one piece, if this was cut into 8, this one piece is most certainly smaller than 1/4 of a pie. So let's think through this, okay? The circle, this part is bigger, which means 1/4 is bigger than 1/8. But if we had just looked up at these numbers at the top, if we had just looked at the decimals and not anything else down here, if we were to cover these, we could see, we could think through, let me take this paper too. We could think through, just from left to right, compare the numbers. Okay, this is my comparison one. So we're looking at this 0 and this 0. Okay, so let's just see. If I was to check, this is the same. Then we have the 2 decimals, and then we see that this 2 out of 10 is bigger than 1 out of 10. So right away we can tell that that fraction is larger, and we learned that in a much, much earlier lesson. Okay, so the fact is that 25 hundredths is a bigger piece of a pie than 0 and 125 out of 1,000, 125 thousandths. So these sides, everything on this side is the same, everything on this side is the same, and the answer is greater than. Okay, let's move on to now number 29, please. Number 29 says take 2 1/4 pieces and 1/2 of a piece. Number 29. So 2 1/4 pieces. Okay, so that's like 2 of these. Okay, on your fraction manipulatives, that would be just this one part of the fraction circles that are cut into 4ths. So 1/4 plus another 4th equals 1/2. So if you have this plus another one of these, wouldn't that be the same as 2 of these? 1/4 plus 1/4 equals 1/2. Now it tells us, right underneath this, write the same number sentence using decimals. So once you've drawn these, how would you write 1/4 as a decimal? Well, first thing it shows us is that this is the same as 0.25, which is what, 0 and 25 hundredths plus. So what would this be? 1/4 again is 0 and 25 hundredths. And the 2 of these together, if you add 0.25 and 0.25, don't you get 0.50? Which is the same as 1/2. So 1/4 plus 1/4 equals 1/2. Or 25 hundredths plus another 25 hundredths equals 50 hundredths. Isn't that the case? You could even show it this way. 0.25 plus 0.25 is the same, if you were thinking about it as money, is the same as 0 and 50 hundredths or 50 cents, right? So the numbers you're filling in are this and this. for number 29. That takes us to number 30, and I'm tired. How about you guys? Number 30. I bet you were tired a long time ago already. All right. Number 30. It says, take 3 1/4 pieces. Can you see that with green? Not so well. Let me go back to my thick blue marker. Number 30. Take 3 1/4 pieces and put them next to a 1/2 piece and a 1/4 piece. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to just write 1/4. How many of those 1/4 pieces? I believe it said 3. 1/4, 1/4, 1/4 equals how many fourths? 3/4. And they gave us this, right? And what this is equal to is if you take like these two together, a fourth and another fourth, isn't that the same as 2/4? So if I combine these two, that gives me 2/4 plus 1/4 is 3/4. Remember, since the denominators, the equal parts are the same, you can just add the numerators right across. Okay. So now it says, now write the same number sentences using decimals. So it wants us to write this 1/4 as a decimal. So once you have this, this is really already written for you, right? So once you're thinking about the 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4 is the same as 3/4. Now we're going to write this again. Well, I'm going to write it again. You don't have to. 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4 is 3/4. Okay. And the other part, 1/2 plus 1/4 equals 3/4. That's just what's already written down for you. Now we are to turn this part into a number sentence and that part into a number sentence. So let's go ahead and turn them into decimals with number sentences. 0 and 25/100. That's what 1/4 is. I'm writing right underneath the fraction, plus 0 and 25/100. So this is this one, right? Right. There's the other one. Let me do another one. 0 and 25/100, which is this one. Go ahead and draw arrows to them. Okay, so I have 3/4 or 1/4, and then all of that together equals what? If you add 25, 25, and 25, don't you get 0 and 75? And that is what this is. So it's just shown us that we have just seen that we can take 1/4, turn it into a decimal, and add them up as decimals, or we can add them up as fractions. 1/4, 1/4, 1/4, 1, 2, 3 out of 4 equal parts, or 25/100, 25/100 plus another 25/100 is the same as 75/100. So I've just proven to you that 3/4 is the same as 75/100. Okay, but there's a little bit more. There's the and for you it goes down to the next line, like right underneath here, but I'll just put it here. So 1/2 now is the same as 0 and 5/10, or we can say 0 and 50. We can add the 0 if we want. It's not there. Plus the 1/4. So this is this. And then the 1/4 again is 0.25 or 25 hundredths. Okay, and it's kind of the same thing. We have 50 plus 25. These two here combined would make 50 and 25 hundredths, giving us 75. Here we have a half, so 50 plus 25 hundredths, which also gives us in the end 75 hundredths. Okay. Oh, that's a lot. That's a lot, but hopefully it's not as scary or complicated as it looks. If someone was to just walk in the room here, they'd say, ah, what is that? Let's move on to number 31. Number 31 says start with 4 quarter pieces and take away one of those quarter pieces. Okay, so if I have, this was a fraction manipulative, right? Let me write the number. We're on number 31. If we have 3 of these quarters, right? And then you take away one of them, what's left? Okay, so here I have 1/4. Here I have another 1/4. Here I have another 1/4. Just these. We're just talking about these. If it's your fraction circles, you would just have these 3 pieces that I've shaded. Okay, so 3, 1. Oh, actually, it said 4 1/4 pieces. Sorry, 4 1/4 pieces. So you would have 4 of these, right? And then take away one of those 1/4. So we are now to, where's my red pen? Don't know. But if you take one of those away, okay, wouldn't you have 3/4 left? 1, 2, 3. This would be the same as 3/4. And how do we turn that into a decimal? Now it says, now write the same number sentence using decimals. So 4 quarters, 4 of those at first would have come to, let's see, 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4. Isn't that the same as 4/4? And 4/4 is the same as just one whole. 4 out of 4 would be the same as 1. If I just did 1, 2, 3, 4, I would have 4/4, which is the same as 1, right? So now it's saying if I have one whole minus, and here's your problem, 1 1/4 equals 3/4, it says. Okay, so this is what we have. 1 1/4 equals 3/4. Now, how would you write all of this as decimals? Well, 1 you would leave alone. So you'd have 1. Can you see that? Not so much. You would, let me see if I can use black here. You would have 1 minus, and then there's a couple of lines for you to fill in. This equals this. And then, so 1, there's the 1, minus 1/4, which is 0.25 or 25 hundredths, equals 3/4. And we already know that 3/4 is the same as 0 and 75 hundredths, right? So that is our answer to number 31. Number 32. Now it says to start with 4 1/8 pieces. Okay, so let's move on now. If you're ready, go ahead, and this is the part here at the bottom that you filled in. Okay. Let me erase this. And we will move on to number 32. Are you ready? I'm ready. There's only 2 more problems. We're so close. Number 32 says start with 4 1/8 pieces. And it says, here is a fraction number sentence for this subtraction. So what they give us is a half, which is, let's see, well, let me just write it. 1/2 minus 1/8 equals 3/8. Okay, and they're telling us that this is true. This is equals. This equals. And so we have, let's see, we have to write the same number sentence using decimals. So how would we maybe draw first the 4 1/8 pieces? So it said there's 4 1/8 pieces. So I'm going to start with that. Here's an eighth. Boom. Here's another eighth. And we have 4 of those. Please draw this with me. Cut 4 congruent circles into eighths. Okay, so here we go. And then shade 4 1/8 pieces on your paper. Okay, do this next to number 32. 4 1 out of 8 pieces, so 4 of those. Now it says we're going to take one of those pieces away. Okay, so if I were to take away one of them, then how many do I have left? Don't I have 3 1/8 pieces left? Right? I used to have 4/8 minus 1/8 is 3/8. Okay, and so now it gives us this, which they're saying basically this is the same thing as these numbers. 4/8 minus 1/8 is 3/8, because look, and in fact I think I'll write it under here, 4/8. Isn't that really just a magnified half? 4 out of 8 is equal to a half minus the 1/8, and that is 3/8. So here what we've just done is we've used 4 1/8 pieces and cut away one of those, giving us 3/8. And then we took that 4/8 and we thought of it as a half. Isn't 4/8 the same as a half? So 4/8 minus 1/8 is 3/8, just like in our picture. But this is exactly the same as saying a half minus 1/8 is 3/8. Okay, all right. Now it tells us, as if this weren't enough for us already, it says now write the same number sentence using decimals. Okay, so how would we write these two? We're just going right underneath and we're going to write 4/8. We are going to write it as a decimal. And what will we have? 0 and 5/10 minus, do you remember what the decimal is for 1/8? Look back. 1/8. Look back at number 27. 1/8. Remember, 1 divided by 8 is the same as 0 and 125 thousandths. So 0.125 equals what? Equals what? 3 out of 8 is another number. Now we could just do 0.5 minus 0.125, or we can get this answer 3/8 by going 3 divided by 8. No problem, we could do that. It would be a long problem to do. I think we should just subtract, take 0 and 5/10, add a couple of zeros, so it's 0.500 subtracted by this. So here we go. We have, I'll just do it on the side here, 0.5, and we are going to subtract that by 0.125. Remember to line up everything. Well, how can I line up everything if I only have 5/10 at the top? I need to add a couple of zeros. Okay, and now I have something that looks like 0.500 minus 0.125. Let's do some subtraction. 0 minus 5, I can't do. Can't borrow from the 0. Let's borrow from this 5. Make that a 4. That is like borrowing 100. So this becomes, we're going to leave this as 9, which is really 90 plus the 10 we're going to give over here, right? So 10 minus 5 is 5. We say 9 minus 2, but it's really 90 minus 20, isn't it? Is 7 or 70. 4 minus 1 is 3. Drop down your decimal point, drop down your 0, and we have found that 0 and 5/10 minus 0 and 125 hundredths, with the tongue sticking out, equals 0 and 375 thousandths. That's like 375 of something out of 1,000. Okay, and that is number 32. Number 33, our last and final problem. Okay, do you have that yet? Let me go ahead and spray this down while you get started on number 33. Now it says in number 33, last problem, start with 1/2 piece of something. Okay, so start with 1/2 piece. So draw that. Then it says, and take 3 1/4 pieces. How would we take 3 1/4 pieces? Okay, well, if you have your fraction circle, you would have a 1/2 piece, and then you'd have 3 pieces of the one that cuts into 4, a 4-piece circle, right? But I will just draw it for you here. So 3 1/4 pieces, isn't that the same as a 4th plus a 4th plus another 4th, right? A quarter. So 3 1/4 pieces. Isn't that the same as what I just drew? Instead of drawing a 4th and a 4th and a 4th and 3 circles, I just went ahead and combined them into 3 1/4 pieces of the same circle this time. Okay, now it says, notice that 3/4, which is this, is greater than 1/2 by 1/4 of a piece. Yes, it's only bigger by this much, by 1/4 of a piece. So what they're saying here is 3/4. This is 3/4. This is 1/2, right? And so they're saying 3/4 minus 1/2. If I took this part away, what would I be left with? 3/4 minus 1/2 would give me 1/4. Okay, so let's see. So 3/4. If I took away this much, 1/2, took this part away, what would I get? I would get just 1/4. So what they're doing is basically showing these backwards. 3/4 minus 1/2, 3 out of 4 minus this part minus 1/2 equals what's left, 1/4. Now for this number sentence, or this fraction equation, we need to know what these decimals are. It says write the same number sentence using decimals. So we have 0 and 75 hundredths, because we know 3/4 is this. It's like 3/4 out of 4/4, 75, minus, what is 1/2? Remember back on the other page, 1/2 is the same as 0 and 50/100ths. And now think, 0.75 minus 0.50, isn't that the same as 1/4? 0 and 25/100ths. All right, guys. Well, thanks for following along and listening. Be sure to have all of that filled out. You will be sending that to school this Friday. Not this Friday, I'm sorry, April 24th. There will be no pickup this Friday, but there will be one the following Friday for everything you did this week and everything you do next week. All right. Love you guys. See you later. Bye-bye.